Why are Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Allgeier, Jordan Love, and Puka Nacua players that you must be targeting in your waiver wire in week 2? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher for NFL Network and fantasy analyst at NFL.com.
Yes, it is a waiver wire Tuesday on the show, Michelle, so I'm excited to share our picks here of guys that you want to go after. We'll break it down for you who's out there. A lot to look at the waiver wire immediately going into week 2. A lot of injuries that we need to talk about. And first and foremost, before we get into it, Aaron Rodgers is done, looks like, for the season with an Achilles. He lasted one series, not even a series there for the Jets this season. It's brutal. I don't know if I'm crying so much about Aaron Rodgers as I am as much for Garrett Wilson. And I'd say Garrett Wilson. Maybe I actually might be happy for Breece Hall here.
Yeah, Breece Hall looked amazing. Looked way better than Dalvin Cook. If you got him at a discount, it's looking like a great deal for you right now. Very excited to have him in one of my main leagues here. But Garrett Wilson is a guy I've been touting everybody has, right? But he's one like I kept moving up and up and up and up my ranking. So I have him in many leagues, and it's hurt. I don't want him anymore because Zach Wilson cannot give him an accurate target. I mean, Garrett Wilson, just to get any fantasy points in last night's game, he had to basically steal an interception away from the Bills defensive player and catch a ball with he had to make it a crazy catch to just have that touchdown, which without that would have been a terrible fantasy night for him. He's an amazing player and he'll still have okay fantasy value, but he's not going to be worth that first early second round price anymore without Aaron Rodgers there. And we got one pass attempt from Aaron Rodgers. One.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I do have Garrett Wilson in a key league here, but I do know that, look, I'm still going to get wide receiver 2 production. That's what he was last year. So I can't be too sad about that. The talent is going to rise to the top here. Maybe they'll do something at quarterback here that's going to help him, or maybe you'll see Garrett Wilson score every week to save himself. So something might happen here. I'm just not as optimistic, obviously, as we all are not with no Aaron Rodgers and at least Zach Wilson in there for now. We'll see if Tim Boyle comes back or someone like that goes into the lineup here and they start doing by committee like they did last year. So really, it's tough. If you had Aaron Rodgers as your fantasy football QB, we'll get into that in our last segment there. Potential replacements. There's plenty out there. So don't worry. I mean, you probably drafted him as a borderline QB1. There are a lot of those players with some upside here. So we'll break those down for you. Last on the show, we will start with the running backs. Before we do that, I'm going to tell you this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, Michelle, let's get into the running backs. This is the primo position. This is what you target a lot with your fab here and your waiver priorities here. So let's get into our top 2 guys for sure. And in a lot of leagues, they're still available. They were drafted. If you listen to the show, you would have drafted these guys. But Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Allgeier, if you're in a shallow league or just a league where people don't believe in adding all the running backs, these guys are available.
Yeah, especially Tyler Allgeier. I think everybody was just like, Bijan Robinson was drafted so early. Let's see how much workload he gets. And I thought, I knew Tyler Allgeier would be involved in the beginning, and it is only week 1, so maybe his involvement doesn't stick, but I don't really see a reason for them to move on from it, right? It worked well. They won the game. Allgeier looked good. He did everything well. Now, Bijan, I think, could do everything Allgeier does and better, but there's no reason to run down Bijan Robinson and give him a gazillion touches when you also also have another good running back. Like, let them do, each have a lot of touches in a game, because they clearly want to be a heavy run team that does not have to depend on Desmond Ridder at all. So Tyler Allgeier is probably my favorite pickup off waivers right now, just because you can plug him in with Bijan Robinson still there. And I think he will produce some solid RB2 weeks, most weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the situation we saw in Atlanta years ago. It wasn't as exciting as this, I don't think, with Warwick Dunn and TJ Duckett. I would say this is more a situation where this is the Falcons' offense, right? It's not Drake London, it's not Kyle Pitts, sadly, if you have those two players. It's these two guys as much as possible, hiding Desmond Ridder at quarterback as much as possible. Arthur Smith's going to do this. So I think don't look at it as bad for Bijan, because it's going to help keep him healthy. And I think both these guys can be explosive and produce. And Bijan was clearly the preferred guy in the passing game, really over even Pitts and what London was doing. He had a 0 there. So I think there's plenty to go around for these two guys. If they're kind of like the Jalen Wall and Tyreek Hill of this offense, except they're in the backfield.
It's like Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara during Kamara's rookie season. Both were very good fantasy options, with Ingram being a little less explosive, not going to be as flashy, just kind of like I think Bijan Robinson still is going to be a top 5 running back this year. He's going to give you the more consistent upside, while Allgeier is just a solid RB2 you can plug in most given weeks, and you need those guys, right? So I think Tyler Allgeier is very much worth that waiver wire priority this week.
Yeah, and Kenneth Gainwell, we talked about him, and really he should not be out there. I mean, DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. Swift didn't get a lot of opportunity there in week 1. Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch. Gainwell looks like the guy. We will monitor, however. He has a rib injury here. He had an estimated DNP. You're ahead of Thursday Night Football against the Vikings. So something to watch there if they have to change things up again. It would not surprise me if this is week to week, but right now Gainwell looks like the guy at this point, hopefully over like Boston Scott, and we don't have to think about him next week. Michelle, another injury that we're monitoring is Austin Eckler. He had an ankle injury late in that game against the Dolphins. Joshua Kelley looked good, and there's a parallel to be drawn with another combo backfield of Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott from last year. You have Kellen Moore, obviously, in Los Angeles with the Chargers. So Joshua Kelley might have some independent value, given that he produced really well. I don't know if this Chargers running game is going to go for 209 yards every week, but I think at least he's a premium handcuff here.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like we've seen Josh Kelley have okay games as like a side piece, and then he had to come in and be a starter before, and he's just been incredibly bad. He did have the same number of carries as Eckler, but it felt like his usage really did just pick up once Eckler was dealing with that ankle injury. He got the touchdown because Eckler went out with it, with the injury. So I'm not like super high on having to pick up Josh Kelley. There's also just so many offensive plays in that game. I don't think that's going to hold up throughout all their games. It was just like the Dolphins would score within 0.5 seconds of having the ball. So then the Chargers and the Chargers were able to move the ball a lot. So they had so many offensive plays. I'm fine with picking him up as a handcuff to Eckler, but I'm not needing him if I don't have Eckler on my team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's also a tough matchup this week against the Titans. Their run defense is pretty stout here. It took the Saints a lot to get anything going with Jamal Williams last week. So something to keep in mind if you're looking for a plug and play. He's not that Eckler style running back now.
Yeah.
Zach Moss, I don't know if I can invest too much in the Colts backfield. Deion Jackson did look good. I think someone is a product of the offensive line. Also, don't forget about Anthony Richardson is going to call his no number and run plenty to take away from what these guys can do. But I agree with you. I think Zach Moss has the most upside for now without Jonathan Taylor there, because Deion Jackson looked awful.
Yeah, Deion Jackson was just so terrible that if Zach Moss is active in this game and he plays, he's going to get all the opportunities to be the lead back here, at least as long as Jonathan Taylor is out. And it's a really nice match. He gets a really nice matchup in week 2, right? It's against the Texans. So he has a chance to really break out. We saw Justice Hill even score 2 touchdowns against the Texans. Like, I think Zach Moss is a viable option to play in week 2. And from there, like, that's why I believe he should be waiver wire pickup this week. I would prefer Allgeier, but after that, I would want Moss over a guy like Josh Kelley. I am stuck though on deciding between Zach Moss or a guy like Gus Edwards or Justice Hill? I know you're a Justice Hill guy. I slightly lean more Gus Edwards. You tell me why you'd prefer Hill over Edwards as a pickup.
Well, a couple reasons. Justice Hill played ahead of Edwards there, and they didn't really use Edwards until J.K. Dobbins went down. So there's one thing. And Justice Hill had a very good preseason. The other thing is, this is not the same old plotting offense we had before with Greg Roman. This is a different type of offense. Justice Hill has a little bit more juice as a receiver to help in that capacity here. I think you'll also see Melvin Gordon unknowingly get into what Gus Edwards' role might be here because he's like a plotting power back here. Justice Hill, I think, has the most explosiveness of these guys, and they might use him in more passing situation. We know suddenly the Ravens are a passing team, Michelle. Who knew? So this could be better for Justice Hill than maybe the old Gus bus here. So maybe they're going by air more than by bus here in Baltimore going forward.
Yeah, so my biggest concern with looking at those snaps is, yeah, Justice Hill may have been used earlier on, but I think it's because he's the change of pace back, right? They had their J.K. Dobbins, and then they brought in Justice Hill at times to be the change of pace. Gus Edwards now, like we see this a lot when the starting running back goes down. It's not always that change of pace guy who comes in and is the starter. It's the backup, and the backup is Gus Edwards. He can play the J.K. Dobbins role. We've seen it plenty, and every time they need a guy to carry most of the workload, right? Which is not a ton in this backfield. It is Gus Edwards. So I think they're going to lean on him. We saw that once Gus Edwards went down. Edwards had 9 carries, or 8 carries after the Dobbins injury. Hill only had 3 carries for -2 yards in the fourth quarter. Both played a close to the same amount of snaps, with Gus Edwards playing a little bit more. But I think I lean Edwards as the full-time guy, even though I do agree with you that Justice Hill has more upside and like is more explosive. But we've seen Gus Edwards be good before. Just he might also get hurt after like 5 carries as well.
Yeah, and Justice Hill, I did like that they used him at the goal line a couple times. That was also a
Yeah.
little bit helpful because I wasn't sure if he was going to get that type of role. But interesting debate there. We'll see how it plays out. I'm not enthusiastic about either back that I need to pound the table for. But if you're desperate, you lost Dobbins, you're going to go that way. Now, Cam Akers, we know for some reason Sean McVay is going to do everything he can to not give Cam Akers opportunities. Although he did get 22 carries in this game, it was not until late in the game until they had to ice it, and they just had a big lead there against the Seahawks. So Kyren Williams, we've heard them talk about him before. I've seen him a lot at Notre Dame. He's a pretty good back, but I just didn't see this coming. It's like the Darrell Henderson twist from last year. It's always, here's another reason to not play Cam Akers. And Kyren looked good, but I just don't trust it again. Neither back got any work in the passing game, and that scares me. This was still a passing first team. They just happen to have a big lead, which I don't think the Rams are going to have very often this year.
Well, yeah, and that's why you can't play Cam Akers, at least
Yeah.
moving forward until we see that change. But Kyren Williams, before the lead, was huge. I mean, he outsnapped Cam Akers significantly in the first quarter, in the second quarter, in the third quarter. He was the one that had more carries heading into the fourth quarter there. And then Cam Akers had 12 of his 22 carries in the fourth quarter, got his touchdown in the fourth quarter. And it seems like Sean McVay is saying, Kyren Williams, hey, you're our starter. I don't think he's especially talented, but I would, if I had to rank these guys, it would be Tyler Allgeier, Zach Moss, Kyren Williams, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill.
Yeah, I think I'd go close to that. Throw in Joshua Kelley only because I don't think his role is totally going away here there. So we'll see how it plays out with those backs. Just a couple guys I mentioned. Roschon Johnson looked really good here. I know Khalil Herbert did well, but it looks like it's going to be a clear committee there. So you want a piece of this Bears run-heavy offense. And Chuba Hubbard, just on the list as a potential handcuff. I don't know if Miles Sanders was spectacular. He was pretty solid with the volume, but Chuba looked pretty good as well, and the Panthers want to run the ball. So a couple more guys there. And Michelle, I think we'll have some good wide receivers to talk about in our next segment as well.
Yeah, a lot of wide receivers that went off in week 1 that we were not expecting. So a long list to get through here. But before we do that, get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, lots of wide receivers to jump in here. Just some we want to note right off the top. They're probably rostered in your league, but just take a look. Jacoby Myers, he definitely was a top favorite target of Jimmy Garoppolo in week 1. Got to give all that credit to Vinny. If you've been listening, Jacoby Myers will be rostered because he would be on your team. And then Romeo Doubs, if you've been listening to us, we've been talking up Romeo Doubs as well. So check those two guys, see if they're on your roster. There's also Nico Collins, who had 11 targets, 6 receptions, 80 yards. He was drafted in a lot of leagues, but also check that as well. Although, are you impressed with that line? I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm really excited about the Texans in general. Just disappointing for Dameon Pierce as well. So I don't know. Like, I think the options right now, Nico Collins is it, but it would not surprise me if it pivots more to Robert Woods or Tank Dell at some
Yeah,
point. I think
that's
it's
the thing. It was like Collins had 11 targets. Robert Woods had 10 targets. And I mean, Robert Woods on 10 targets only put up 57 yards. Collins on 11 targets only put up 80 yards. This just makes me more excited about Tank Dell. He had 4 targets, 3 receptions, 34 yards. Only played on 37 snaps, while Collins, Woods, and Noah Brown all played 50 plus snaps. I expect his snap count to increase, and then he would be the best wide receiver on this team and actually produce. So again, I just want to stash Tank Dell if I'm keeping any of these Texans wide receivers on my roster.
All right, now we got to get into some juicy guys here that we've been waiting to talk about. These both Rams guys had 119 receiving yards exactly in week 1. Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. Michelle, I will say I did draft Nacua with one of my last picks in a draft, so I stashed him. It's good because I had Sky Moore as my other kind of sleeper there, so I feel a lot better about Nacua than I do Sky Moore. Then Tutu Atwell, big game as well. We know there was no Cooper Kupp. Van Jefferson looked terrible. Ben Skoranek looked terrible. So I think definitely the play here for longer term might be Nacua, even if Cooper Kupp comes back. But I think Atwell has some value as well.
Yeah, I mean, Sean McVay talked up Nacua like crazy and then utilized him. Like, it's cool to actually hear a coach say something and then do it. Like, that does not happen often. You can't take that 15 targets lightly. I mean, 40.5% of the Rams team targets. You're not going to have Cooper Kupp back until at least week 5. And we're just acting like he's coming back in week 5. We have no idea. It could be longer than that. And even if Cooper Kupp comes back, Matthew Stafford has loved to hyper target one guy, and Cooper Kupp is going to get his targets. But I don't know how a defense, if they're going to focus so much on Cooper Kupp, Nacua should then have an easier path to success as well, maybe some deeper targets. So I'm definitely focusing on Puka here over Tutu Atwell, who I think he's talented. I do. It's just we've had a longer history of him not producing consistently. And so much of his production just came off of super long plays. I don't think that's just easy to rely on from week to week. So if I'm picking up one of these, it's Nacua for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's going to be interesting to see what Nico's role does here really going forward. It's a tough matchup this week against the 49ers, but I think they can scheme him open. If he's in the Cooper Kupp kind of role right now, that's great news. They're going to use him as a proxy Cooper Kupp. So excited about that. And we know Sean McVay can get some guys open in whatever matchup. So I'm happy about that. Now, a former Ram is also getting some buzz here, Josh Reynolds. Look, we can't forget about what happened on Thursday night. He was clearly their best downfield receiver, playing off Amon-Ra St. Brown. Here, Sam Laporta also looked good. So I think it's basically those 3 guys in the passing game with a little bit of Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think Josh Reynolds is exciting, but
No.
how high are you on him that maybe you can plug and play in the right matchup? And I think this week might be it. The Seahawks really look bad against the aforementioned Nacua and Atwell.
Maybe, but like I don't want to pick up Josh Reynolds. He doesn't do it for me. He played 49 snaps, 4 receptions, 80 yards, 33 of those yards were on one catch. Like I don't care about Josh Reynolds at all. I think Gibbs will get more involved. Sam Laporta will get more involved. And then plus you have Jameson Williams coming back after week 6. So it would just be a short rental that you're getting off waivers. There's too many other guys with way higher upside and that can actually be a difference maker for you that you can stash instead.
Yeah, and one of those guys is definitely Rashee Rice. In that same game we saw, he scored the touchdown for the Chiefs as Kadarius Toney was dropping everything. Sky Moore was absent for most of the game. Just wasn't a lot going on at wide receiver, so maybe Rashee Rice has an opportunity here.
Oh, absolutely. He looked like the only good Chiefs wide receiver in the game on Thursday night. And he didn't get a ton of opportunity, but he tied for the team high 5 targets and 3 receptions without playing very many snaps. So, and he had the 1 touchdown as well. I really like Rashee Rice. He's not someone that you can play yet because we haven't seen him be on the field enough, but I definitely would be happy to just keep him on my bench. Like, at this point, if you drafted Sky Moore, would you drop Sky Moore and pick up Rashee Rice instead to stash him?
I would think about it. I would definitely drop Kadarius Toney, just like he
Yeah.
dropped passes on Thursday night. I don't want any part of Kadarius Toney going forward. I think his performance should say, "Hey, we don't want to play this guy. Get Sky Moore, Rashee Rice some more opportunities." But yeah, I'm with you. Rice at least has maybe that touchdown upside there. That Sky Moore, I don't know if he has. I mean, he scored his first touchdown in the Super Bowl last year as a rookie, so I'm not that enthused here. But Rice is worth a shot because he had a pretty good preseason. Now, Rashid Shaheed, I don't know if I'm too interested, Michelle, just because there's Chris Olave, there's Michael Thomas, there's Juwan Johnson, Alvin Kamara is going to come back at some point. And I just think that was a product. Again, we'll get into the wide receiver rankings. This is why I like Mike Williams this week. Product of the Titans secondary being bad and giving up big plays downfield. So he's a shot play guy. I'm not sure those shot plays are going to be consistent. We can't count on them. But I do like his upside. I think he's a talented receiver and coming off a pretty good rookie year. I don't like him this week, though, against the Panthers.
Yeah. 41 of his 89 yards came on 1 play, 35 snap count. It's decent, but not something you can rely on. He's a big play dude. And if you have him in best ball, like if you were to draft him, I think that's a good place to have him, but I don't want to trust him just plugging him into my lineup in any given week. Especially like you said, Alvin Kamara comes back. He probably steals some of those targets as well.
Yeah, and I think this means maybe less for Juwan Johnson. Maybe they do want to spread the field with the 3 receivers and let Derek Carr loose here, and that could be good for Sheed in some weeks, but you got to look at the matchup, and maybe he's a good play if they can get some big plays, and I don't know if that's going to happen every week. I don't think it's going to happen against the Panthers. Now, Kendrick Bourne, we had Juju Smith-Schuster on the list. Devontae Parker got some attention here. I don't know. Kendrick Bourne is okay. He kind of was a serviceable wide receiver 3, but I'm going to say I feel like he's the new Jacoby Myers. I wasn't that excited about him while he was in New England. I got excited about Myers going away and being a number 2 receiver. I'm just not excited about any Patriots receiver. I get it. Kendrick Bourne scored twice and he can be there, but I think he has a very limited capacity for consistency week in and week out.
I actually really like Kendrick Bourne. So this is a guy I was thinking about hyping up all off season long. And for some reason, I just kept holding it in because I'm like, it's Kendrick Bourne. I just couldn't talk I couldn't talk myself into drafting him. And I just, but all the data says that Mac Jones is really good with Kendrick Bourne. Those two have a connection. It was before this year. And then in the first game, 11 targets, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. But if you're just looking at passer rating between a quarterback and a wide receiver, they're sitting there at 112. Only Tua, Jalen Waddle, Tua, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown have higher passer ratings as a quarterback wide receiver duo with 100+ targets among current quarterback wide receiver duos. But so their connection has been serious over the last 3 years here. And Mac Jones has 39 career passing touchdowns. 11 of them went to Hunter Henry. 8 of them have now gone to Kendrick Bourne. And then 9 others went to Jacoby Myers and Nelson Aguilar combined. They're no longer on the team. No one else has more than 2. So it's I feel like Mac Jones's dudes are Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne, which I'm kind of interested in. I don't know. I'm kind of interested in picking up Kendrick Bourne and seeing what happens.
Yeah, maybe we just forgot about this passing game and we just said, okay, Juju seems to be the guy here, but we weren't sure because the Patriots always do this to us. But look, Kendrick Bourne was a pretty good player in San Francisco. He was a guy that they looked in the red zone as well. So the Patriots have mined someone who can be valuable here. That's good for them. I'm just not too excited. Like, again, I'm not going to say that he's going to score twice every week, but it is encouraging, however, Michelle, that it happened against a pretty good Eagles secondary that didn't play well in the second half. Now, a couple other guys on the list, I'll give you a choice of who you like of this group. Jaden Reed, there. We'll see if Christian Watson doesn't play here again second week. If he's in, I don't know if I'm into Jaden Reed, so we have to watch that. Allen Robinson with the Deontay Johnson injury, hamstring as well. He should be out multiple weeks here, so maybe he's got a little bit more interest than Calvin Austin. And then Zay Jones, just putting on a list. Where would you go with any of these three if you were desperate here in a deeper league?
No, my Lord. So Jaden Reed did look good, but at the same time, he only had 2 receptions, and one of them was 30 yards. Like, and with Christian Watson potentially coming back, I just think it's going to be too inconsistent for him to pick up just yet. Allen Robinson could be the Steelers wide receiver 1. I mean, he did lead the team with 8 targets in week 1, and Deontay Johnson's out, but like, gross. I don't like it. And so maybe Zay Jones, right? He did play a
I do
team
like
high
Zay.
62 offensive snaps in week 1, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 55 yards, and a touchdown. I do think there's too many great players to go around, but Zay Jones at least offers you the most upside in any given week.
It was interesting. We saw some more 2 tight end sets than I expected. Did not expect that a lot from the Jaguars, but he used that, and he was the other guy on the field there with Calvin Ridley. So I don't know if this is bad for Christian Kirk. We'll see how it develops. I think it's going to be more week to week based on where the good matchup is, number 2 on the outside or number 3 in the slot. So we'll see how that plays out. But I do agree with you, Zay Jones, the only interest for me in this group. Now we'll get into potential quarterback replacements. If you lost Aaron Rodgers, we're sorry, but don't be sorry. There's some ways you can pivot and really help your team. We'll get into that in our last segment. Before we do that, I got to tell you more about PrizePicks, our title sponsor here. And really, PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun you can have. They're winning up to 25 times your money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less than their projected stats, and place your entry. You can test your skills on PrizePicks, and it's really the most exciting way to play. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. There's quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So check it out here. Really, it's all a lot of fun on PrizePicks. And again, it's daily fantasy made easy for you. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL to use the promo code LockedOnNFL for first deposit match up to $100. So check it out there. PrizePicks is going to take you there, and daily fantasy made easy for you to score and win big. All right, Michelle, we will wrap up the show looking at some quarterbacks, some tight ends, and we have a few picks for some streaming defenses that should be available in a lot of leagues here. So let's get right into it. Sam Howell, one guy we've been talking about. Jordan Love, the one guy I've been talking about. We said both of them could be top 10 QB. So if you've been listening to the show, they should not be available, but they are available in a lot of leagues. And then Brock Purdy, maybe just a forgotten guy in the mix once Trey Lance was traded. So I think any of these guys are pretty solid. And I think they could come through for you in a lot of weeks. I lean a little bit more Purdy and Love because I think they played better than Sam Howell overall, but I think all three have some viability going forward.
Yeah, I like Howell's upside, of course. He does have a few tough matchups coming up here: Broncos, Bills, Eagles. So not a great lineup of games. So if you need him because you lost Aaron Rodgers, like, probably would look more towards Brock Purdy. The 49ers have a really nice schedule, and he's not like a super high scoring quarterback, but he also is never going to kill you. He has 2 passing touchdowns or more in every single regular season start in his career. It's wild. He just has all the weapons he needs, and any guy he gets the ball to in their hands, they can take it to the house, right? You don't have to depend on him throwing it deep. So I think Brock Purdy would be the one I'd be looking to pick up here. Jordan Love's also a nice pickup. I'm still waiting to see, like, is the Bears defense just that bad, or is Jordan Love like the real deal? We'll find out here shortly. And then I also say keep an eye on if someone drops Daniel Jones after that disaster performance against the Cowboys. Cowboys are a really good defense. He was going to struggle against the Cowboys defense. He has, right? And throughout his career, especially last year. Pick him up. It'll get easier for him. He'll be a better fantasy quarterback. Like if he gets dropped, just keep an eye on that.
Yeah, totally good call there. Someone could actually do that reaction hate drop that happens in a lot of leagues, believe it or not, especially shallower leagues. So watch out for that. But I agree with you, Love and Purdy. When you look at the talent around them, the schedules, all those things line up there. A little bit more. Sam Howell, I want to clean up his act a little bit. He was a little bit sloppy there against the Cardinals. And
it was a really gross weather game.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope it's not gross in Denver, but I just want to see him play a little bit better. I think the eye test says reality-wise, Jordan Love and Brock Purdy played a little bit better toward their numbers. So I feel a little bit more confident they won't mess up as much. I'll say that. So let's get into tight ends. Quickly, Luke Musgrave, still available in a lot of leagues. Big play tight end for the Packers. He may not get a lot of volume, but still clearly he's involved for some big plays. Michelle, you banged the table for Hunter Henry in the draft. He came through. He was actually, I think, in many cases, the top tight end of the week here. So Hunter Henry should not be out there anymore in leagues. So Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst. I mean, I love saying those names fast together. Those got to be the two pickups there you're looking at, right?
Yeah, and it's definitely Hunter Henry for me over Hayden Hurst. I just think he's on the better team, and I think he's Mac Jones' favorite target with Kendrick Bourne there. I do think most of the targets are going to go through those two guys. And then also, if you're just looking at next week's matchup, Hunter Henry gets Miami. Like, he should be one of the top plays again next week, while Hayden Hurst gets the Saints, which is a pretty rough matchup for a tight end. So I don't trust him next week. If I'm not picking up a tight end if I can't play them right away. So it's just Hunter Henry for me here. If I don't have one of the elite tight ends, I need a tight end to start. It's Hunter Henry. Also, Sam Laporta is going to be out there in some leagues as well. He did not go drafted in every league. Check for him. He looked really impressive. He didn't put up huge numbers, but in his first ever game in the NFL for a tight end, Sam Laporta looked really good. He's a guy that you can pick up and like kind of stash as a backup, even if you have a good other tight end.
Yeah, Hayden Hurst also, you can't play him because Puka Nacua was zeroed by the Saints, and that's who the Panthers play this week. So definitely can't pick him up and play him this week. It's going to be very low upside, where Hunter Henry actually might have a lot of upside. Now, you made a good call pre-waiver wire here, looking at Cole Turner. Was a different tight end, though. Logan Thomas got some key targets there from Sam Howell. So he's okay. He's a lower-end option. I got decent production. I had to plug him in at the last minute for Travis Kelce. He was okay. Two guys, Michelle, I'm not interested in. I know the targets say go after these guys. Zach Ertz had a crazy 10 targets, but only 6 for 21. And then Durham Smythe, really? I don't know. Like, I don't see him being a big factor here. In fact, River Craycraft seemed to be a little bit more involved behind Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So I don't know. I'm not feeling it with Ertz or Smythe. I just think these are going to be committee type approaches with these tight ends and just a fluke of maybe the particular matchup.
I don't think the Zach Ertz 10 targets is a fluke because he was utilized like crazy without DeAndre Hopkins last year as well. Maybe it was a tough matchup against Washington. They were good against tight ends the year prior. Maybe it'll be better against the Giants. We'll see. Zach Ertz is someone I would consider just volume based. Like I don't expect the production to be efficient with Josh Dobbs there. But Durham Smythe, I have no interest, especially because week 2 he plays the Patriots. They just held Dallas Goedert to 0 receptions. Yeah. No, thank you. And I just think so much of that game had to do with being such a high score game. I'm not interested in Durham Smythe at all.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So we'll close here with the waiver wire. Look, streaming defenses are hard to find here. Everyone jumps on the obvious ones, right, that you look at. Oh, this is playing a bad offense. But I have 3 maybe guys, okay, collection of guys that are out there that can be good for you this week. And I'll give you these 3 options, Michelle. These should be widely available in your leagues. Don't use any fab budget. Go get these on the super cheap. Play them for 1 week. The Giants at the Cardinals. You can't disagree with that, I don't think. But you might have some opinions on these. Buccaneers at home against Justin Fields. Fields looked bad last week. And then the Texans, this is very sneaky. The Jaguars scored a ton of fantasy points against Anthony Richardson. And the Texans defense is actually not that bad. They kind of caused some problems and made Lamar Jackson look ugly, similar type quarterback. So these are my three like super cheap in most cases. Maybe the Giants are own a lot of leagues, but I think this is where you would look at it, your very, very cheap plug and play 1 week options.
Yeah, I like those options. I also really like the Lions against the Seahawks. I mean, Geno Smith just fell flat on his face in week 1. The Lions defense looked pretty solid against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I know they made so many I know the Chiefs receivers dropped a lot of balls and made mistakes, but it was still against the Chiefs, and they still only allowed 20 points. And Aiden Hutchinson looked like a destroyer on that line. So he might be able to make Geno Smith make more mistakes than he made Patrick Mahomes make. So Lions' defense, I'm definitely interested in possibly streaming this week.
All right, excellent. Yeah, so there are plenty of choices there. So don't sweat that. You shouldn't sweat it in any week. But this is why we're here to help you on the waiver wire every single week here. This is for week 2. We'll be here all season long helping you upgrade your roster, whether short-term or long-term. That's what we do. We're Locked On Fantasy Football, your destination to become the smartest fantasy football and player league. Part of Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, don't forget, we'll turn our attention to the week 2 rankings. So we'll have a look at the running backs there and quarterbacks for you. So good stuff to start the week there as we flip the page from week 1 to week 2 here on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.